October 1941. Soviet Military Hospital. Bryansk. Mikhail Kalashnikov, 21 years old, tank commander, lay in a hospital bed with shrapnel in his shoulder. Around him, wounded Soviet soldiers complained constantly, their rifles jammed. Too heavy, too complex. German troops had better weapons. Soviet infantry was dying. Kalashnikov had no engineering degree, 10th grade education, just a tank mechanic. But he started sketching. A rifle. Simple. Reliable. Indestructible. Nobody believed him. 24 years later, his rifle, the AK-47, would be carried by soldiers in over 100 countries. More copies than any firearm in human history. And it would beat every Western weapon designed to replace it. This is how a wounded soldier designed the rifle that changed warfare forever. Mikhail Timofeyevich Kalashnikov was born November 10, 1919, in the village of Kuria, Altai Krai. His family were peasants, farmers, the kind of people Stalin's regime called kulaks and deported to Siberia. Mikhail's childhood was poverty, labor, and survival. School ended at 10th grade. At 17, he was conscripted into the Red Army. They made him a tank mechanic. He was good at it. He'd designed small improvements to tank equipment. Tools, hatches, mechanical fixes. His commanders noticed. This kid understands how things work. But he wasn't an engineer, wasn't a weapons designer, just a sergeant who liked fixing problems. Hospital. Winter 1941 to 1942. Kalashnikov sketched a submachine gun design. Crude, hand-drawn on paper, no training in ballistics, no formal design background, just observations from wounded soldiers and his own mechanical intuition. When doctors cleared him for light duty, he requested assignment to a weapons workshop. His request was approved, not because anyone believed in him, but because the Soviet Union was desperate. Nazi Germany had reached the gates of Moscow. The Red Army needed every idea, every design, every weapon they could test. Kalashnikov's first prototype submachine gun failed. Completely. Jammed after a few rounds. Misfed constantly. Soviet engineers dismissed him. "Go back to your tank unit, Sergeant." Most people would have quit. Kalashnikov didn't. 1944. The war was turning. The Red Army was pushing Nazi forces back toward Germany, but Soviet infantry still lacked a truly reliable automatic rifle. The Tokarev SVT-40 was too fragile. The PPSH-41 submachine gun was short-range only. Soviet command issued a directive: design a new automatic rifle, 7.62 by 39 mm cartridge, simple, rugged, a competition. Open to all designers. Some of the Soviet Union's best weapons engineers entered. Sergei Simonov, experienced, respected designer. Alexei Sudayev, designer of the PPS-43 submachine gun. Others from established design bureaus. And then there was Mikhail Kalashnikov, still a sergeant, still self-taught. No credentials, no formal engineering degree. The experts didn't take him seriously. While other designers focused on precision and sophistication, Kalashnikov went the opposite direction. Make it simple. Make it so simple that a conscript with no technical training could field strip it in 30 seconds. Make it so reliable that it works covered in mud, sand, ice, or blood. His prototype used a gas-operated rotating bolt system. Borrowed concept from American M1 Garand and Tokarev rifles. Stamped metal receiver, cheap to produce. Fast manufacturing. Loose tolerances. Parts don't fit perfectly, on purpose. Dirt and debris have room to move without jamming mechanism. large clearances between moving parts, reliability over precision. It was the anti-German approach. German weapons, like the STG-44, were beautifully engineered. Tight tolerances, high precision. Kalashnikov's rifle was crude by comparison, but it worked. 1946, first trials. Kalashnikov's prototype faced the evaluators. Military officials, design bureau chiefs, veteran gunsmiths. They picked up his rifle, looked at the rough stampings, the simple construction. One commented, "It looks like it was built in a tractor factory." Kalashnikov replied, "That's the point. The rifles were tested under every condition Soviet evaluators could devise. Submerged in mud, then fired. Frozen overnight, then fired. Dragged through sand, then fired. Dropped from height, then fired." Kalashnikov's rifle worked. Every time, other designs jammed, failed to feed, misfired. His just kept firing. One evaluator called it stupidly reliable. 1947. The Soviet military designated Kalashnikov's design Avtomat Kalashnikova, Model 1947, AK-47. It wasn't the most accurate rifle, it wasn't the lightest, it wasn't the most advanced, but it was the most reliable. And in warfare, reliability beats everything else. Kalashnikov, still just 28 years old, had designed the weapon that would define the next 75 years of conflict. He had no idea what he'd created. 1960. Pentagon Weapons Testing Facility. American engineers examined two rifles. The M16, lightweight, aluminum frame, plastic stock. Advanced ballistics. Cost $175 per rifle. The AK-47. Heavy, stamped steel. Wood stock. Crude manufacturing. Simple mechanics. Cost $30 per rifle. On paper, the M16 was superior in every measurable way. 1965. Vietnam, Mekong Delta. American troops deploy carrying the M16 rifle. The M16 was everything the AK-47 wasn't. Lightweight, accurate, high-velocity 5.56 millimeter round. Technologically advanced. In the jungle, it failed. Vietnam's heat, humidity, and mud destroyed the M16. The rifle jammed constantly. Soldiers died trying to clear malfunctions mid-firefight. Meanwhile, North Vietnamese forces, armed with AK-47s, had no such problems. Drop an AK in a rice paddy, shake it off, keep firing, bury it in mud for a week, dig it up, wipe it down. Fires. US Marines started picking up AK-47s from dead NVA soldiers and using them instead of their issued M16s. The US military eventually fixed the M16 better. Ammunition, chrome-lined barrels, cleaning kits, but the damage to its reputation was done. The AK-47 had proven Soviet design philosophy. Good enough beats perfect when perfect doesn't work. Let's be clear about the differences. The M16 had an effective range of 500 meters. The AK-47, 300 meters. The M16 weighed 3.6 kilograms loaded. The AK 4.3 kilograms. The M16 had over 30 moving parts. The AK just 8. The M16 required regular maintenance. The AK-47 minimal. The M16 cost $700 to $1,000. The AK-3 to $5. The M16 is objectively more accurate, but the AK is objectively more reliable. Different philosophies. Soviet approach, mass production, reliability, acceptable accuracy. American approach, precision, technology, higher training requirement. Neither is better. They're optimized for different militaries, different doctrines, different wars. But in irregular warfare, insurgencies, guerrilla conflicts, failed states, the AK-47's reliability wins. 1950s. The Cold War begins. The Soviet Union starts exporting AK-47s to Allied communist states. Not selling them, giving them away, along with production licenses. Build as many as you want. Free. Soviet foreign policy was simple. Arm socialist movements, support revolutions, export ideology. The AK-47 became the physical manifestation of that policy. China produced the Type 56, Yugoslavia the Zastava M70, East Germany the MPI-KM, Poland the PMK, Romania the PMMD. 63. Each country modified the design slightly, but the core remained. Kalashnikov's gas-operated rotating bolt system. By 1960, AK-47 production exceeded 5 million rifles. By 1970, 20 million. By 1980, 50 million. Today, over 100 million AK pattern rifles, more than any other firearm in human history. By the 1970s, the AK-47 had transcended its role as just a weapon. It became a symbol. On the flag of Mozambique, an AK-47 crossed with a hoe. In the hands of Che Guevara, revolutionary icon. In Palestinian resistance posters, liberation struggle. In countless photos from African conflicts, the universal guerrilla weapon. Cheap, available, effective. If you wanted to arm an insurgency, militia, or revolution, the AK-47 was the default choice. By the 1980s, the AK-47 had become the weapon of choice for terrorists, drug cartels, and armed groups in failed states. Not because Kalashnikov designed it for those purposes, but because it was everywhere. Cheap. Simple. A person with minimal training could learn to operate one in minutes. Illiterate fighters could maintain one with minimal instruction. The AK-47 enabled conflicts that might not otherwise have been possible. Kalashnikov would later say, this haunted him. 2009. Interview with Mikhail Kalashnikov. He's 90 years old. The interviewer asks, "Do you regret designing the AK-47? Kalashnikov pauses. Long silence. Then, I'm proud of my invention. But I'm sad that it is used by terrorists. I would prefer to have invented a machine that people could use, and that would help farmers with their work. For example, a lawnmower." Kalashnikov received awards, honors, medals from the Soviet Union. But no royalties, no personal wealth. Soviet doctrine, military designs belong to the state. He lived on a state pension in a modest apartment in Izhevsk, the city where his rifle was manufactured. By the end of his life, an estimated 250,000 people per year died from AK pattern rifle fire. Conflicts, armed violence, more deaths than from any other small arm in history. Months before his death in 2013, Kalashnikov wrote a letter to the head of the Russian Orthodox Church. "My spiritual pain is unbearable. I keep having the same unsolved question. If my rifle claimed people's lives, then can it be that I, a Christian and an Orthodox believer, was to blame for their deaths? The longer I live, the more this question drills itself into my brain, and the more I wonder why the Lord allowed humans to have such a devilish desire to do evil." The letter was published after his death. It revealed what Kalashnikov never said publicly. He carried the weight of 100 million rifles, and every death they caused. Was Mikhail Kalashnikov responsible for those deaths? He didn't pull the trigger. He designed a tool used by Soviet soldiers defending their homeland, by people resisting oppression, but also by terrorists, dictators, and armed groups. Is a designer responsible for how their invention is used? Oppenheimer wrestled with the same question about the atomic bomb. Alfred Nobel created dynamite, then founded the Nobel Peace Prize. Kalashnikov's rifle wasn't created for evil, but it enabled violence at a scale few weapons ever have. The AK-47 didn't stop in 1947. It evolved. 1959, the AKM. Modernized, lighter, cheaper to produce. 1974, the AK-74. 5.45mm round, more accurate. 1991, the AK-74M, polymer furniture, rail mounts. 12, the AK-12, modern ergonomics, accessory rails. Every Russian and Soviet rifle since 1947 has been a Kalashnikov derivative. The DNA remains. Gas-operated rotating bolt. Loose tolerances, simplicity over sophistication. Weapons inspired by the AK-47. The Finnish Valmet M76. The Israeli Galil. The Chinese Type 56. Countries that built their military doctrine around the AK. China, North Korea, Cuba, Vietnam. Most of Africa. Most of the Middle East. The AK-47 didn't just arm armies. It shaped how those armies fought. December 23, 2013. Mikhail Kalashnikov died at age 94 in Izhevsk, Russia. President Putin declared a day of mourning. State funeral. Military honors. The designer of the world's most widely used rifle was buried with full ceremony. But the rifles didn't stop. Today, an estimated 100 million AK pattern rifles exist. One for every 78 people on Earth. They'll keep firing long after everyone alive today is dead. Because Kalashnikov designed them to last. Mikhail Kalashnikov wanted to defend his country. He succeeded. But his rifle also armed conflicts in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and dozens of other nations. The weapon meant to protect the Soviet Union ended up being used in ways he never intended. The rifle designed by a peasant farmer from Siberia became the tool found in conflicts worldwide. This is the paradox of innovation in warfare. You cannot control what you create once it's in the world. From a hospital bed in 1941, a self-taught mechanic with a 10th grade education designed a rifle that would outlast empires. The AK-47 armed the Cold War. It armed revolutions. It armed resistance movements. It armed conflicts across continents. It changed warfare forever. And it haunted its creator until the day he died. This is the legacy of Mikhail Kalashnikov. Not just the weapon, the man. A man who wanted to defend his country and accidentally armed the world.